Wow, what a difference. The Talkbuster Podcast. Hi, I'm Chris Chipman. You may remember me from such podcasts as the Chipman Brothers Tangent and Creating Geeks, a parenting podcast of great responsibility. I'm here to bring you back to the late 90s, early 2000s, a time of Amrays and clamshells, a time of late fees and VHS tapes being replaced by DVDs, a time of stale gumballs and overpriced candy. Yes, that's right. I am talking about the time of Blockbuster Video, the Walmart of the video rental industry, the mom-and-pop video store killer, the corporate big choice video store that everybody loved to hate. Blockbuster is mostly gone now, aside from Alaska for some reason due to lack of fast internet and parody Twitter accounts. By the way, The Last Lonely Blockbuster is amazing and you should be following them. Kids today will never know the crazy Friday and Saturday nights with lines wrapped around the store to rent the next big movie. No more will regulars who are in the know arrive at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays to snatch up the new rentals that week before the weekend rush. Most of all, no longer will young movie geeks like myself have the memories I, and many others like me, made while working there. You see, under all of the corporate evil and bad practices, Blockbuster was a home, a comfort, a place where I made lifelong friends and even met my wife. It is because of these memories that I, and I'm sure many of you, have, that the Talkbuster Podcast was created. A place for me and others to share our memories of what once was, of the before time, of the long, long ago. I'm looking forward to see where this goes, how it evolves. Join me, won't you? Episode 1, The History of Blockbuster and a Discussion with my wife, Sarah Chipman. Blockbuster LLC, formerly Blockbuster Entertainment Incorporated, and also known as Blockbuster Video or simply Blockbuster, was an American-based provider of home movie and video game rental services through video rental shops, DVD by mail, streaming, video on demand, and cinema theaters. Blockbuster became internationally known throughout the 1990s. At its peak in 2004, Blockbuster employed 84,300 people worldwide, including about 58,500 in the United States and about 25,800 in other countries, and had 9,094 stores in total, with more than 4,500 of these in the United States. Competition from the Netflix mail order service, which Blockbuster strangely had a chance to purchase for over $50 million in the year 2000, but turned down. Whoops. Redbox automated kiosks and video-on-demand services were major factors in Blockbuster's eventual demise. I even remember when I was working there, and we got Video Store Magazine as store managers of the place, and they had a picture of what would eventually become the Redbox type of rental services on the front, and we all kind of looked at it at a store meeting one morning and said, yeah, we're not going to be around much longer. So through all this, Blockbuster began to lose significant revenues during the 2000s, and in 2010, the company filed for bankruptcy protection. The following year, its remaining 1,700 stores were bought by satellite television provider Dish Network, which is interesting because when we were at Blockbuster, we sold DirecTV. I don't know where that relationship ever ended up, but Dish Network ended up buying them. I think that's shortly after Viacom got rid of them. While the Blockbuster brand has mostly been retired, Dish still maintains a small number of Blockbuster franchise agreements. I think those would be the ones in Alaska, which allows some stores to remain open in a few markets. So, with that...
Didn't you see one in England?
Yeah, but it was closed.
Oh.
So the Blockbuster that I started working at was the Blockbuster in Salem, Massachusetts on Highland Avenue. In the Shaw's Plaza, there was a KB Toy Works there. I think that Blockbuster is now a Londy's roast beef and a Liberty Tax and a People's United Bank or something like that. But at the time, it was, I think, a newer store. I think it was built in the mid-1990s, same as the one in Lynn here, near where I live now on Boston Street. I was 17 years old at the time. I started there in 2001. I owned my first car, just got my driver's license. The first car I got was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais, 1990. Two-door red, had 5,000 miles on it. I thought I was cool shit. But at the beginning of working there, for the first couple of shifts anyway, I drove my mother's Plymouth Voyager minivan to my first few shifts. What more of a perfect young kid at a job than a kid driving his mom's minivan? Anyway, so before I even started working there, I began hanging out at that store when I first got my driver's license. And by hanging out, I mean it's just where I went. I liked renting movies. I went there every other day. Video games, movies. My brother had worked in that store, Bob Chipman. But he was now working for Suncoast Video at the mall, I believe, at this point. And I'd go there because I knew all the guys that worked there. We talked movies, and eventually they offered me a job. Interestingly enough, shortly after I started working there, the events of 9/11, 2001 hit. I was a senior in high school, and I remember very vividly going to the store and working or just being there and it being pretty empty. But our regular customers, especially the ones that didn't have TV at home, would come in and watch the events unfold throughout the news over those weeks on our direct TV in the store. And it was almost like a community meeting space, as weird as that would sound. And I have very strong memories of that, strangely. It's a weird thing to have a fond memory of, but I wouldn't call it fond as much as it really stuck with me. Another thing that, I really remember, and I'd like to preempt that kind of the idea of this show is I'm going to have people on that I worked with or people who were important in my life, like my wife, Sarah, who we're going to get to in a minute. And we're just going to kind of shoot the shit, tell stories about, things that happened while we were there, things that were going on in our lives. But, to kind of hit a few of them, inventories were a really cool thing at this store. And you'd have to scan everything in the store. So we'd wait till the weekend, because most of our inventory wouldn't be there, which made it a lot easier. I was 17 at the time and was underage, so I couldn't work until close. The store is closed at midnight for those of you that never came across a Blockbuster. They were also open 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Didn't close for holidays, never changed their hours. So even on Christmas, we had to work, or at least somebody had to work. And they were open till midnight. We didn't, leave until 1 or 2 in the morning, after working in this store. And it was really interesting. But anyway, I'd leave when I was supposed to go home at night and hang out with other people from the store that weren't working. And then we'd come back and either help do inventory and get paid under the table, or, just kind of stay there and hang out and watch movies on the store play. And then we'd all go to Denny's afterwards. And there was this Denny's in Danvers, Massachusetts, that had like a table that the Denny's employees referred to as the Blockbuster table. We'd always sit there. And it's interesting, looking forward to that. That Denny's isn't there anymore. It's at like an Econo Lodge or something like that. But they actually filmed a scene at a diner it was supposed to be in The Heat with Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock at that Econo Lodge and at that Denny's. So I always thought that was kind of cool. Also, oftentimes we'd be doing this on Friday and Saturday nights, and the other patrons at this Denny's were often people in full get-ups for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which they had midnight shows at over at the Hollywood Hits Theater, especially around Halloween time. So that was fun. Another cool thing, fast forwarding a little bit, is when Blockbuster eventually closed, like I mentioned earlier, my brother bought me the gumball machine from the store that we all worked in. And by we all, I mean the majority of my groomsmen from my wedding, and a bunch of other friends who I hope to have on this to help share some of their stories. At least 10 to 15 of the best friends I've had in my life I worked with at this store. But the interesting thing about gumballs, why are gumballs important? You all walked into Blockbuster. You've all seen that obnoxious standard gumball machine that every place had, the blue and yellow Blockbuster logo right on the front. And why is it important? Well, Blockbuster's whole business model was based on transactions. So it wasn't based on how much money we were actually making from these transactions. It was based on how many things on an individual customer transaction could you scan and send out the door with them. That's why they did the favorites rental, because you're sending more product out the door. That's why they did deals on popcorn, because you're sending more product out the door. It's how many times you scan something. So a gumball, which costs the company a fraction of a cent, they're charging for a quarter, actually has the highest markup of any item in the store. And so these transactions for this gumball had to be done manually. It's not like the gumball machine is counting them, every time they go through. So we'd send some new employee out when we knew we were going to have a busy week, or when we knew people were coming back from college or from high school, for the summertime and needed extra hours, and we'd scan the gumballs. And what that means is someone would have to count all the quarters and then go and do a single transaction and multiply it by 2,500 or however many gumballs there were and scan this gumball barcode. And what that would do is that would pad our transactions. So the year before, it would compare the week that we're scanning now, and it would say, oh shit, there's twice or 10 times as many transactions. It would then boost up your following week when you got the hours from the company. So it was an interesting thing we'd have to do. So doing the gumballs was like this really, kind of degrading thing, but we all had to do it. And it was kind of like a way to pad the numbers and get away with something, as it were, as a manager there. So getting the gumball machine and having it still have those, little... Carl and Ray. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Sarah. The Carl and Ray gumball's still in it. Now, Carl and Ray, okay, were James Woods and John Belushi, or Jim Belushi. Yeah, John Belushi's dad, Jim Belushi, as a guinea pig and a rabbit in a pet store across the street from a Blockbuster, watching, the people go in and rent the movies, and they would comment on the movies. And this was in 1999, 2000. They spent a ton of money on this. It might have been 2001, because I remember us having to come in for a store meeting, and they showed us the video, and they were all amped about it. But anyway, Carl and Ray, again, were a promotion in 2000, 2001. So those gumballs had been in there since 2000, 2001. This was like in 2009, 2010 that Bob bought me this gumball machine. Yeah, and I still have it. So Carl and Ray were still in there. So those gumballs were ripe, to say the least. That's the interesting story about that. Again, when I have more people on, we'll go in more in depth into the inner workings of the store. But let me bring you to the point of this first episode, which is to have my wife Sarah on and kind of have her give you some background in her history with Blockbuster, and then get to how her and I met, while I worked there. So, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, I can finally talk now.
You can finally talk now. So,
if you haven't noticed, podcast with Chris, and you don't get to talk.
So, it's 10 a.m. We just spent an hour getting the store ready to open, so now we're open for business.
Okay.
Rock this thing on.
Run the tapes, Chris.
Run the tapes. That's right. We'll get to those later too. So tell me about your history with the company that once was.
There was one down the street from my house in Beverly that I rented at.
That was a franchise one, so you guys all have those weird like coupons in the paper and stuff that only worked at that one Blockbuster.
I don't remember coupons, but sure.
I remember people bringing them in and complaining that they couldn't use them at my store.
But I'm sure some of you guys took them anyway.
Yeah, we did.
That's about it. I dated someone at that store briefly.
Did you guys shop there a lot?
I did, because I worked at the mailboxes, etc. next door, so I usually went over and got movies. And because I liked that guy, so there you go. But yeah, that ended about as quick as it started.
You're talking kind of low.
Womp. Anyways, so Salem Blockbuster. I had a job. It was actually the same store, mailboxes, etc. But the Salem location. It was owned by the same brothers, and my best friend worked with Chris at the Salem store, so I would go over and hang out afterwards, because I was a loser and had nothing else to do and no one else to hang out with, and I would just sit and hang out in Salem Blockbuster. I would play in the toy section. Sometimes I cleaned it. Sometimes I helped organize tapes and face the shelves. I might as well have had a job there. I think I even applied, if I remember correctly. I don't know. That's about it. I met you.
Yeah, so remember how I said earlier I was 17 and I'd have to leave early for shifts.
No one can see your air quotes.
I know, I'm doing air quotes. No one can see them.
For no reason.
And I'd have to come back, so Sarah and I would hang out. We'd go to movies.
I was the one in charge of babysitting him.
Yes, we'd hang out in the parking lot in our cars for extended periods of time. and come back. Innocently, yes. Listening to the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back soundtrack, listening to Tenacious D, 10 Foot Pole.
I do have to say that I liked like one Tenacious D song, and for like Christmas he got me the entire CD and was so excited. And I was like, yay, a CD for one song. But now I really like the whole CD, so.
Yeah, I was an idiot. That's what she's basically getting at.
But it was the thought that counts. I still have it.
So Sarah came along to, our first date, should we say.
We should also note that I was 20 and he was 17.
Hell yeah. Woo!
And you'd think a guy dating an older woman in high school would be bragging. No, I was like a secret.
Yeah, it was weird. Don't mind me. But anywho.
Dirty little secret.
We went and saw Shrek. The original Shrek, to date how old we are. The original Shrek debuted when we were first dating. We went and saw that at Hollywood Hits.
Yeah.
And we then went and saw Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back by the almighty Kevin Smith and crew.
7 times?
7 times with the Blockbuster crew. We saw it when it came out.
Twice, just us.
Yeah, we saw it when it came out in the normal theater. And then Hollywood Hits, which wasn't a first-run movie theater, would take movies and play them later on, like when they were out of the regular theaters, and they'd play them at midnight, 1 a.m. So we'd close up shop and all meet there, and then go to Denny's afterwards, and that became kind of commonplace. So that movie's very important, very special to the whole lot of us. So yeah, that's how Sarah and I met, which is really cool. All revolving around the blue and yellow, the Blockbuster video.
Blue and yellow, blue and yellow. I guess it doesn't work as well.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, things that, when Sarah would come and visit the store, that since I was the younger, newer employee, that I'd have to do would be do things like, shrink wrap the previously viewed VHS tapes that were getting put out. So we had a shrink wrap machine, which was like a glorified paper cutter that heated up, and a hair dryer. And I would sit there and breathe in these wonderful shrink tube fumes, and she would kind of hang out right over by the drop box there and make fun of me while I did that, because she's tiny and could fit in between the don't steal this cute thing. Remember that?
Yes. I'm little.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. What else? Do you remember any other funny stories about that time?
I remember I had no idea until after you had dumped me and then tried to get back together with me that I was your girlfriend. I had no idea what the hell I was.
There was that. This is going to be the Make Fun of Chris podcast, I think, tonight.
No. I don't know. I'll try to be nice. I'm your wife. It's my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a very awkward relationship because I had no idea what the hell we were. I thought we were just... I don't want to say friends with benefits because I didn't go that far, but... I thought we were just hanging out, making out kind of thing. I don't know.
But, then I went to college and we got back together.
And I was... gave me the old heave-ho.
But then we got back together and I was still working for Blockbuster.
Yes, and I laughed at you when you tried to get back together with me because you were drunk as all shit. 10 beers in, and I laughed at you.
Yep.
And now here I am.
Yeah. So there's that. And then we got back together and now we're married. Been married for...
4 years in October.
4 years in October. And up until 2008-9, I still worked for Blockbuster. I went from Salem to Woburn, then to Swampscott, and I also worked for Lynn and Peabody and Middleton a couple of times during that period of time. Yeah, helped out over there every once in a while. So yeah, there's that. So
he also gave me not so good movie rental advice.
Yeah, I told her to rent.
Dude, where's my car? No, dude, where's my refund?
I told her to rent. Dude, where's my car?
Stupid ass movie.
I was young, and they did make Harold and Kumar after that, the same director.
Well, that was better. But yeah, dude, where's no, just no. Nice. And that was before I knew I could just come right back with the tape and say I hated it and get my money back.
Well, with some of us, you could pull that one off.
I worked at the Beverly's. You go to the Beverly? It must have been.
They were a franchise. They were a franchise. So something else I want to try to do just because it's fun and I think it'll be a fun gimmick for this. Blockbuster did this thing, or at least we tried to. The company tried to squash it after a while, where we could have employee favorites. You go into a video store. So I figured that me and whatever guest I would have on would pick an employee favorite, some movie, that meant something to us from the time of working, or in Sarah's case, probably just a movie that she really likes. And then the other person recommends an employee favorite. Oh no, sorry, a Blockbuster favorite, kind of the free rental you'd get with the rewards program to
I forgot about
remember that?
Blockbuster rewards.
To rent along with it. So I'm going to start with mine. My employee favorite for this week's episode of the Talkbuster podcast is a film filmed at Danvers State Mental Hospital called Session 9. This movie, when we worked at Blockbuster, we got 5 free rentals a week, and they wanted us to rent things before they put them on the shelves so we could view the product and talk to people about them. So Session 9 was something I had been following. Now, Danvers State Mental Hospital is now apartments, and someone I was working at Blockbuster with ended up getting an apartment there, which is really cool, and I'm sure I'll have him on so we can talk about that later. And my mother worked there back when it was actually open. The place closed in the late 80s, early 90s. But she said it was incredibly creepy. It's known for being haunted, and they made a movie kind of about that where they're renovating it and getting ready to turn it into what they were really doing, which was turning it into apartments. And a crew comes in to like clean out asbestos and clean the place up, and ends up getting kind of tormented by the spirits from there. And it's one hell of a well done little low budget movie. It was done by Brad Anderson, who also did The Machinist and Next Stop Wonderland, which if anyone knows the local Boston T, Wonderland is the last T stop on the Blue Line. And it's just an all-around really creepy, really well-done movie, and living around here just kind of adds to it. And working at Blockbuster and being able to rent that and then tell people about it, hey, it was filmed right up the street, was really cool. So, Sarah, I'm going to rent Session 9. That's my employee favorite. And what's your recommendation for my favorite Blockbuster favorite to rent with my rewards card with that?
I'd say the Paranormal Activity movies.
Huh?
It's a good series of movies if you like to be scared shitless.
Yeah, they're very well done. I think that'd be awesome. Cool. Sarah, what's your employee favorite?
Tremors.
Tell everybody about Tremors.
It's just a stupid movie. But it's
You're really
fun.
Talking it up. It's a stupid movie.
Well, no, it's not like Oscar nomination worthy, but well, if you ask me, it is. Yeah, it's a movie about these underground. Do they ever give them an actual name?
I think they call them the Graboids.
But there's never, I guess, actual.
No, they're like sandworms.
And then when it opened its mouth, it's got little smaller worms that come out, and it's like destroying this one poor town in Nevada. And Kevin Bacon's in it, so it's got to be good because who doesn't love bacon?
And it's got Reba.
And Reba McEntire, who's like my favorite all time. And it's a really just funny, goofy, silly movie. If you want, to watch a town in Texas in the desert get destroyed by these underground monster things, watch this movie. It's fun.
Cool. Well, my recommended title from the Blockbuster favorite section to go with that is a movie called Alligator. And I don't remember who made it. I didn't look it up. But Alligator was a movie I rented from Atlas Video with my brother, which was a video store. It's now a hair salon. It was in Lynn, Massachusetts, in the Tower Hill area on Boston Street. And Alligator, I remember for having really, really great alligator effects. The robotic alligator was akin to the one from Jaws, the shark. It was really well done. And this movie is dumb as a bag of rocks, and I love the hell out of it. I think it was a late 70s, early 80s movie. And, it's just what else would scare a little kid more than, okay, alligator gets into the sewer, lives unbothered, eating rats and all this other stuff, and grows giant and lets loose on this small suburban town. And there's a scene in this movie where a kid, they're having like a fight on a diving board in a pool, and the kid falls in, and the other kid sees all the blood because the alligator was waiting there at the bottom and eats the kid and thought he hurt him. This thing has it all. It's very much in line with a movie like Tremors, and I highly recommend it. Have you ever seen Alligator, Sarah?
No.
Oh, that's one to check out. All right, so again, this is the first episode of this. I'm trying it out. Again, I thought nothing better than to kick this off with, the most important person in my life, being my wife, Sarah, who you guys have heard on the Creating Geeks podcast and various other things we've done. We met at Blockbuster. It's important to us, but get ready for, tons of crazy, fun, wacky stories from the almost 10 years I worked there, and a couple of guys were there even longer before I was, so I'm sure they'll have some stories to add that I wasn't even there for. So I hope you enjoyed this. I really, this is something very personal to me and means a lot. Again, this is made possible, as well as the Chipman Brothers Tangent and the Creating Geeks podcast, by my Patreon. That's patreon.com/thechippa. As of today, we're at a quarter of our goal for that. I'd really like to get that up to the full goal. Can't do that without support, sharing, and patronage from folks like you. Again, everybody that's done it so far, I really appreciate it. Again, the Chipman Brothers Tangent, I do with my brother, Bob Chipman. You guys are probably already listening to that. And Creating Geeks is a geek parenting podcast I do with my wife, Sarah. And again, I can be found on Twitter at the Chippa, and my YouTube account also has a bunch of this stuff on it as well. So that's about all I've got. Thank you for making it a Talkbuster night or day or whenever the hell you're listening to this. And I'm being tapped by Sarah.
Be kind and please rewind.
Oh, that was great. I'm going to keep that.
That popped into my head.